The station smelled of iron, soot, and rain-damp wood. Lanterns hung from crooked beams, their glow trembling in the draft as trains howled through like steel ghosts, leaving behind only smoke and silence. On the far bench sat a young woman, shoulders bent inward, veil folded like a crumpled surrender in her lap. She pressed a handkerchief to her eyes, though the tears kept slipping past, darkening the fabric until it clung to her fingers. Around her feet lay a battered suitcase, its corners scuffed raw by the long journey west, and every so often she bent her head as though she might hide herself inside it. Passengers moved past without pausing, boots clattering, skirts brushing, voices lifting in laughter and bargaining. She was invisible to them, too pale from travel, too red-eyed from grief, too much like something cast aside. But not to everyone. 2 men loitered near the far stove, their hats low, their teeth flashing in the gloom. They had noticed the tremor in her shoulders, the way she sat alone. They drifted closer, their boots dragging with mock leisure, until the scrape of their spurs could be heard in the rhythm of her weeping. One leaned, shadow spilling over her suitcase. "Evenin', miss. Looks like you been left behind." His voice carried the slow cruelty of a man who had no need to hurry. She stiffened, clutching the veil. Her throat worked but no words rose. The other man chuckled low, tipping his hat back to show eyes that gleamed wolf-like in the lantern light. "Pretty thing, like you shouldn't be sittin' here without company." His gaze lingered too long, his hand grazing the back of the bench. The woman pressed herself against the wood, breath shallow, as though the planks themselves might swallow her. Then came the tug at her sleeve, small, unexpected, soft as a sparrow's wing. She turned, and there was a girl no more than 6, hair in unruly braids, cheeks smudged with dust from travel. The child climbed the bench beside her, leaned close enough for the woman to smell the faint sweetness of milk on her breath, and whispered with the certainty of a secret, "Don't cry. Will you marry my dad?" The words, so impossible, hung in the air like a bell's last echo. The men stopped short, glancing at one another with mutters caught in their throats. The little girl slipped her hand into the woman's, firm and unyielding as though she had chosen her place. Then came a shadow long and broad that stretched across them both. A man stood just beyond the bench. Broad-shouldered, tall, his shirt open at the collar and sleeves rolled to forearms thick with work. Rain clung to the brim of his hat, dripping down his jaw. He said nothing, only looked at the 2 men with eyes the color of storm clouds, and in that silence was a weight greater than any threat. The men shifted. One spat, the other muttered something about no harm meant, and together they slunk back into the smoke. The woman's chest trembled as though she had been holding breath for hours. The child squeezed her hand once more, then hopped down and ran to the man, wrapping tiny arms around his leg. He rested his hand lightly on her head, and only then did he look at the woman. His eyes lingered a beat, steady, unreadable, before he nodded toward the door. She understood it as invitation or perhaps command and rose with her suitcase. Outside, the night stretched wide, stars half hidden by drifting clouds. A wagon waited, its canvas cover slick from rain, horses shifting restlessly. He helped her up without a word, his hand rough and warm beneath her elbow. The child nestled against her side as they set off, wheels crunching over gravel, lanterns swaying. The road was long and open, framed by prairie grass that whispered like water. The woman wrapped her arms about herself, shivering. He noticed, shifted without a word, and unbuckled his coat, draping it across her shoulders. It smelled faintly of leather, wood smoke, and the sweat of labor, and she pulled it close. His hands returned to the reins, steady, patient, the rhythm of hooves the only sound between them. By the time they reached the cabin, the moon was high, casting pale light over the fields. Smoke curled from the chimney, promising warmth. Inside, lamplight revealed a space small but solid, walls lined with shelves of tools and jars, the air rich with the smell of stew simmered low. He set her suitcase near the hearth, gestured to the table. She lowered herself, fingers tracing the grain of the wood as though memorizing it. He ladled stew into a bowl, set it before her, then another for his daughter. He did not eat until they were finished. She raised the spoon to her lips, the broth warming her chest, thawing something she had not known was frozen. The girl leaned against her, eyes drooping, and in that weight the woman felt a fragile tether drawing her back from the edge. When the girl finally slept, curled near the fire, the woman found herself alone with the man. He sat at the table, mending a strap with quiet concentration, the lamplight gilding the scar along his forearm. His silence was not cold but deliberate, like earth holding seed. She wanted to speak, about the journey, about the man who was meant to meet her and never came, about the shame she carried like a second skin. but the words lodged heavy. Instead she watched his hands, the way they moved with patience, thread pulling taut, not securing. A man who fixed rather than discarded. She wondered what it might be like to be something he chose to mend. Days passed. The land was harsh but steady, mornings silver with frost, evenings awash in fire-colored sunsets. She moved through the cabin carefully, mending, sweeping, stirring broth when he was outside tending horses. The girl shadowed her, asking for stories, for braids, for songs. Each small request was a stitch drawn through her unraveling self. One evening a rider stopped at the ranch. Dusty, breathless, he spoke of men roaming the trails, bandits hunting women who came west by letters and promises. She heard the words as though from a great distance, her hands tightening around the dish she held. She knew those eyes, those jeers. They had been at the station. They had not forgotten. That night, as wind rattled the shutters, she watched the man by the hearth. He checked the rifle, oiled its barrel, set traps near the fence. His jaw was set but not fearful. She realized then that his silence was not emptiness, but a wall built to keep others safe inside. And still the child clung closer. "Will you stay?" she asked, voice muffled against the woman's dress. The woman bent, pressed her lips to the girl's hair, and though her voice trembled she whispered, "I'll try." The storm broke 2 nights later. Rain slashed against the windows, lightning split the horizon. Hoofs thundered outside, voices rose coarse and cruel. She peered from the curtain. Men circling, torches sputtering in the downpour, faces twisted in greed. A voice bellowed, "Send her out. Ain't no man keeps what he don't own." The rancher stepped onto the porch, rifle steady in his hands, rain drenching his shoulders. His silence broke only in the click of the hammer. "You'll ride off," he said low, steady as stone. Laughter answered. The men urged their horses closer, mud splashing. Inside, the woman clutched the girl, heart pounding. She could remain hidden, could shrink as she always had. But something in her cracked. The memory of tears at the station, the jeers, the shame of abandonment. Not again. She set the girl gently in a corner, then seized the lantern. When one of the men lunged toward the porch, she hurled it into the mud at their feet. Flames licked up, smoke mixing with rain. The horses reared, screaming, chaos breaking their circle. The rancher's rifle cracked once, then again, the sound cutting through storm and terror alike. The men broke, retreating into darkness, curses lost to thunder. Silence returned, heavy but whole. When dawn came, the land smelled of wet earth and smoke. The porch was scarred, but the cabin still stood. She stood there with the child's hand in hers, hair damp, face pale but unbroken. The rancher leaned against the post, rifle at his side, eyes fixed on her. He spoke at last, voice roughened by night and rain. "We could use someone like you here." The girl beamed, tugged the woman's hand. "Will you marry my dad now?" she whispered again, as though the world itself depended on the answer. The woman's breath caught. She looked at the girl, then at the man's shadow stretching long across the yard. For the first time in years, her lips trembled not from sorrow but from the hint of a smile. And yet, beyond the fence, the horizon glimmered with stormlight still. The world had not forgotten her. The last image was of her hand tightening around the child's, a single tear catching the dawn, neither of grief nor of joy, but of a question not yet answered.